Episode attempt part 2.
Yeah, episode 2.
We had a lovely chat in your studio in Santa Monica, and it didn't quite work out.
It didn't, because the engineer, who's really a bloody idiot, I should fire, forgot to push record.
Right.
And that engineer, of course, is yours truly.
And there was some super profound things said too. I think we really sorted a lot of things out in the world.
I think we did, and it's one of those things like when when you're a kid and you'd smoke a joint and you'd think, we've solved the problems of the world. And then an hour later you'd forget what they were.
Wait till everyone hears.
Yeah. What was it what happened? But it was a good chat. It was nice to catch up and hear about what's going on. And
well, it's a rehearsal, I guess.
It was, yeah. I think I talked a pretty hard line on the music business. So maybe I'll take a softer approach this time.
Well, no, I think we should go harder.
Even harder.
Yeah.
Be more brutal. Shall I name even more names than that last one?
I think so, yeah.
Probably just as well that one was actually erased, because there would be probably a series of litigations heading my way.
But aren't you at that point in your career when you don't have to give a fuck anymore?
I really don't. And and anyone who wants to litigate against me has to know that there's going to be no money. So what's the point?
It's the music business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's no reason to.
We had a good conversation about weed as well.
We did.
Which I learnt was one of the main reasons you came to California.
It was the only reason, really, actually. I have to say, I've as a lifelong smoker of the finest herb that grows on the planet, I find it very civilized in California, Sneaking around in New Zealand trying to grow your own, or buying some bag of horrible stuff that all trying to get high is just ridiculous. And it's the 21st century. New Zealand's supposed to be a liberal country. What the fuck's wrong with us?
I know. It's such a drain on society.
I don't get it. And I do remember we talked about this, and I will repeat this because I think it's true. I think there's a degree of racism in New Zealand against weed. And by that, I mean there's this patronising kind of attitude that, it'll destroy Maoridom. Or it'll be very bad for Maori kids. It's like, it'll be bad for all kids if they're smoking at 14. Let's be realistic.
Yeah.
But there's a slight patronising attitude, I think. And I could be wrong there. I hope I'm wrong, but I've always had a distinct feeling that was part of the reason was, you can't, you shouldn't, don't let the natives drink or smoke. And it sounds appallingly ancient to say that, but I think there's a remnant of that.
Yeah. That's awful, but it's also a double standard. Aside from that subject, because there's so much that is considered normal in society that we have no issue with.
Yes.
I mean, I think fast food has got a lot to answer for. Way more than weed,
Yeah, that's right. So. It just needs to be taken out of the shadows down there, like it has here. And then they're doing these big campaigns here now with kids, school kids, talking about why they're not going to smoke the herb all day long. And that's good. I just think personally, if you can go and drink arsenic or make datura tea or drink alcohol or
sniff glue or something.
Yeah, it's just the most absurd hangover from some weird ass pseudo-Protestant background we came from. I don't know.
As far as I understand, it was more of a business move. It was them trying to block the hemp industry.
Wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, there's always money.
Such an amazing product, hemp, and it was a good way to get rid of it.
Well, that's right.
Get rid of the competition.
Yeah, exactly. And the nice thing about the herb is just at the very least, just let people grow a bit. And if you're smart enough to grow a little bit of herb that looks good, smoke it by all means.
Well, that's the part of it that I don't understand is penalising people for having a joint in their pocket. That's a whole different thing to the whole industry of weed and the gangs and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, it is. Well, immediately you legalise it. Of course, it's out of the gangs. The gangs have no more interest in it because they can't compete with the prices. Prices come down here incredibly since it became legal.
Yeah.
Like it's.
And this is since about what did you say last time? Was it January?
January. So we're talking 9 months since it was.
Yeah.
Prior to that. There was the medical thing, which is the usual kind of precursor to legalization. I didn't really want to get a card, but my missus got one, and she would always go for me, and she's like, "Honey, I'm your drug dealer." It's like, well, she kind of started me back on it too, because, when I first met her about 9 or 10 years ago. Oh, hang on, more than that. 12 years ago, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was actually off the herbs, thinking, and pretty clean and everything, really. And I think she immediately said, "Oh, let's go and get wasted."
Yeah.
And,
and how long had you been off it?
Oh, probably only a couple of weeks. I don't know. I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, look, it's not all about the herb, obviously.
No.
And there's no doubt that you wouldn't want everyone wandering around in the state of stoneness that I do. Most jobs you wouldn't, you probably couldn't do. But luckily, with music, I find it totally focuses me in a way that nothing else does.
Right, yeah.
It focuses me in and puts me in a room totally with the music and nothing else.
So do you write under the effect, under the influence?
I do everything, really. Yeah, let's face it. But
Fair
yes,
enough.
yeah.
It's more like, what don't you do?
That would probably be a better question. Well, I usually breakfast sober.
Not by choice though, just because it hasn't kicked in yet.
So I'm making myself sound like an adult drug fiend, which is probably exactly right.
But again, like another double standard is we're all hopped up on coffee and prescription pills and all sorts of shit, right?
Well, this is one of the big issues that I can see, which will be potentially a real benefit to people who have genuine medical needs rather than just a desire to step into the room.
Yeah.
And that is that, I know for a fact, my wife's family are all in the South, they're in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And don't get me started, but their drug cabinets, the pills that are sit on those counters in the morning that they take, some of them, I can't keep track. There's like 20 different things that they're taking in the morning. And you think, at what point do you think that pill number 1 could be affecting pill number 17? And why the fuck don't you just try and take nothing for a while?
Yeah.
And if you're a bit anxious, smoke a fucking joint on your porch.
Exactly, yeah.
And put down the Miller Lite and smoke a joint. It's an interesting one, that whole attitude. But, it requires forward thinking, and that's one of the reasons I love California and why I feel, as much as I am a New Zealander, I can't not be a New Zealander, and I love being a New Zealander, and I love New Zealand. To me, it's a treasured little escape, and just a little Alice in Wonderland hole down there, that hopefully too many people don't find out about, but they already are, I guess.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I really like this state of California. It represents a lot of things that I admire in culture and the free thinking. And even on the drive here, I was listening to NPR station. They were talking about some new legislation against doctors that were basically on probation, and patients should be able to know all this stuff. Right. And at the end of it, the interviewer was, "Are you aware of any other states that are implementing this?" He said, "No, this is a California initiative, but many will follow once we do it."
Yeah.
So many things have come out of that kind of attitude, the green energy, all kinds of stuff that's driving not just this country, but I think a lot of the time the rest of this country is slower to pick up on that vibe than other countries are, New Zealand, Australia, Europe, and so on.
Well, it makes sense, but obviously California is full of creative people.
Innovation,
yeah,
and creativity. It lives here in every facet. It's very interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel the difference when I come here. I feel like I immediately click.
Yeah, you're a guitar player, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone goes, "Oh, cool."
Yeah, and everyone you meet's writing a movie or auditioning for something. Or
the film industry is gigantic, and it doesn't just mean actors and writers as well. It's all those other people, all the craft, which is all the food people, all the tons of extras. Like if you come to LA, if any musicians that are listening, or whatever creative art you're in, you ever come to California, you can always get on go and be an extra.
Yeah, yeah.
And you'll get I've never done it myself, but my wife did it before she got into stunts.
Right.
She got in there.
Yeah.
That was her window in there. But Yeah, you can go along and you'll be treated like a sheep and you'll be herded around, but you do get free food and you get about $120 for a day of standing around.
Yeah.
Talking about how great your acting career is going to be once you're in front of the camera.
I've done it once actually. In New Zealand, yeah.
Oh, right.
What was the movie? It was one of those vampire werewolf movies. What was it called? Underworld, I think.
All right.
Underworld 3 or something. And it's a very long day. Yeah, it was a good experience, but I couldn't hack it. Just standing there all day, and I think we shot 2 scenes, one at each end of the day as well. It just did my head in.
Oh yeah, no, that the film industry is real hard. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart musicians, that's for sure. You know, it's early starts. Like my wife was on a flight at her pickup was 4 a.m. You know, on a flight to Atlanta, 4-hour flight. She gets off that plane, goes straight to rehearsals, and then back to the hotel, sleeps, then 6 a.m. call into the stunts. Better be onto it, because otherwise you could get yourself seriously hurt.
Right.
And then she'd be on a plane back that next night. So that's and then the next day she might have another thing. So they have long days. Those days can be 14, 15, 16 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all got friends in the film industry. We can't remember them because we never see them.
Right.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it before, but let's talk about your wife's job again. I mean, it's to clarify, she is a stunt woman.
She's a stunt woman, yeah. She was a cheerleader, and as New Zealanders, we kind of probably think, cheerleading, just waving a few things around. It's really kind of cheesy, but it is a bit cheesy. But in fact, it's also acrobatics and gymnastics.
Absolutely.
And
she's in the States especially, right?
Yeah, it's very competitive. Yeah. She was competitive. They were the national champs from Tennessee, whatever her high school was, or college or something, I'm not sure which.
Was she doing that thing where they're flipping them in the air and all that?
All of that stuff, yeah. She's real tiny, like real tiny, 4'10".
Wow, yeah.
So she was the one on the top of that pyramid doing the double somersault off and all that stuff. So that's how she transformed into stunts, basically. And that and an almighty kind of drive and sort of fearless chutzpah to try anything. And I would say that's true of any of these creative arts too. If you say yes and then figure out how you're going to do it later.
Absolutely.
Always say yes.
Yeah.
Have you ever... I mean, that happened. Have you ever flipped a bike before? Yep, I can do that. All right, and then it's like, better buy a bike, go and start flipping it down at the park.
I always remember when I was in a studio once doing a session, doing guitar, and the producer said, "Hey, can you play the mandolin?" And I was like, "Yep." And why? And he goes, "Because if you can play the mandolin, we've got another session for you next week, which of course is more money." I'm like, "Oh fuck no, yeah, right. Oh totally." And I had like 3 days, and I was busy for 2 of them or something. So I borrowed a mandolin, downloaded all the chords and scales and everything, and just spent an afternoon.
There you go.
Went in there, and of course I didn't need to know that much information. I just had to play a few melodies, but nailed it. Got another day's pay.
There you go. That's the one. Well, and now you can play the mandolin, and you got paid.
Exactly. Did you always have that attitude from the start? Like,
yeah, I'll pick up any instrument and make a hash of it. That's fine.
And the yes attitude when someone says,
yeah,
do you want to join this band or do this gig or whatever?
Always, yeah. You just say yes. I mean, although these days less so, because sometimes you really just have to say no. But pretty much, yeah. I think you have to be like that, don't you? You know.
What were you like as a kid? Were you quite a social person or quite an introvert or?
No, I always had a gang.
Yeah.
And they were the ska kids at school, and then the punky ska kids, and then bands, you know, and then hospitality people. Because if you're playing, as you know, I played clubs for at least 10 or 15 years, I suppose. About 10 years, I guess, around in mainly Auckland with Blue Speak, the jazzy sort of thing. I made very average attempts at being Chet Baker and Miles Davis combined into one addled party boy. But again, I was lucky in with that one that I had real jazz musicians around me: Tom Ludvigson and Paul Hewitt and Peter Scott and all those guys. Chris Watts, great players. And I learned a shitload off them. But the point I was going to make was that, you end up living a night lifestyle when you're doing that. We were probably only doing 3 to 4 shows a week, maybe 3. Yeah. We had 3 regular gigs, and then occasionally you'd get a wedding or a party or something.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so you end up living that nightlife where you're sleeping in late because you're up late. Everyone you know is either all your girlfriends are barmaids.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Because otherwise, it doesn't work.
It's the only people you run into.
Yeah.
Really,
Well, and the other thing, it's terrible. People getting up early when you're trying to sleep and going off to work is not convenient.
So you never had a day job or anything like that?
Never had a day job. Yeah. I was a student for a while, and at Auckland University I did 3 years of architecture.
Oh yeah, so you can build a house?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh shit, yeah. I'll do a bridge right over that harbour, no problem. No, architecture is one of those things where I think music you say yes, but I think if you were a bridge designer or an architect and they said, we're building the biggest tower ever, you probably wouldn't get asked. But it's a good lifestyle, and I think I suit those hours, and I always have. And even as a kid, I couldn't stand getting up in the morning. And I liked to stay up late. I never wanted to go to sleep.
Yeah, yeah. Do you find it hard sometimes to relate to people who have more conventional lives? Because I do.
Well, I find them more interesting in some ways. I found, just because it's so different than what we do. It's like, it's kind of like, I know what you mean, though. Of course, yeah. I feel like I couldn't live that life myself, although I'm forced into it a little bit with a kid now, with the little one.
Yeah.
Having to get up, I fucking hate it. Take her to school, But I would say that if you're going to be certainly an artist, I think you don't want to fall into the trap of surrounding yourself with only artists. I think you need to find out more than that. Yeah. Kiwis generally good at that because we usually travel a bit, and there's not that many artists. But you don't want to end up, I don't think, entirely surrounded by people like you.
I think that's true for the way you spend your time too, because I know that I was just all in from the start. Like it kind of snapped in my head when I was about 12, and I was just all in. That was everything I was.
Right.
And somewhere in more recent years, I think I started to relax that. It's like, I can do other things. I can be. I don't have to be this person all the time.
Yeah, it's okay to know one lawyer.
Yeah, and I I actually about the same time we got a dog, and we started doing it. You know what I mean? And it sort of balanced my head out a bit. Yeah,
that's right. Well, that's an age thing as well. I think there's a certain point from about 13, 14, through to about 21, 20.
Yeah.
Where you don't really know who you are, so you follow the tribe and you figure it out, and you 100% commit to it. And then at that point, perhaps you can branch out. But I don't know. It's a strange world, that's for sure. The creative world, in the sense that no one will drive you but yourself.
Right.
You have to. So you have to believe in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're hopeless.
And you have to. I realise that too. Like, no one's going to do it for you as much as you can do it for yourself.
Well, actually, on that exact subject, we became friends with Melinda Newman, who was one of the editors of Billboard magazine when we first came up here in 2003.
Yeah.
She was a bit of a fan, so we sort of got to know her a bit, and she said the best bit of advice ever for any musician, and it was, no one cares about your career as much as you do.
Right. Yeah.
No one cares quite as much.
Sometimes that's a hard lesson to learn.
About your career as you do.
Look at the thing I made, and you're like, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Right. But that's a great one to put into perspective for anyone, for managers, for girlfriends, boyfriends, band members, so on. You're you and they're them, and they've got their own priorities, and yours have to be your own music.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll be your own journey through music, I guess, or whatever creative thing it is.
I think we've all grown up looking at the Beatles and bands like that, and it's the idea of being in this sort of tight little unit, and everyone's in together. I think we all deep down want that, don't we? Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah.
We still do. I mean, I love touring with whoever it is. It's often these days it's only two or three, or it always was only. All the touring we did in the US was duo, so oftentimes just me and Ted, manager Michelle Becker. But nothing like getting the gang of boys around, even the old lads like we have now, get the old boys in the van, and it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
We actually have more fun than we used to in some ways, because back in the day, we were more inclined to just get roaringly out of it and then disperse into the city and on our own misadventures, you know. Whereas these days, it's Mark Hughes. He's back to the hotel, make a toasty within about 5 minutes after the show. Yeah. But I still think there's a great feeling of setting out with a little group on a mission of something, and it doesn't. I mean, I'm sure the guys that set out to fix a fucking pothole 2 miles down the road in their truck with their flask and their fucking joint in their bag.
Yeah.
It's probably it's the same feeling.
Yeah.
We're heading out on a mission.
Camaraderie.
Yeah, camaraderie,
yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah. And, some people say, if I could go back, I would change things, or talk to my younger self, I'd tell them to stop doing that or start doing that or whatever. Do you feel like that, or do you feel like you went through a process that got you to where you are?
I did. I think I failed to see huge opportunities that were right in front of me.
Right.
A couple of times. Failed to... Not failed to see them, but failed to process. Didn't do what I ought to have done to take those opportunities. And it would have been easy. It would have just been, don't be a dick. do it.
You didn't identify them, or you just didn't handle them?
I just think that there's a certain stubbornness that I've always had that has stopped me doing a couple of things I should have done that really could have made a big difference. Basically,
right. Yeah,
a huge difference potentially. But what are you going to do? I mean. At the same time, I will be able to sit on my final resting place and say, well, I pretty much did whatever I fucking wanted my entire life.
Yeah.
There was very few things that people told me to do that I actually did or wanted to do. So that's something, I guess.
I listened to I think it was either the last or one of the last interviews with Tom Petty, and he said something interesting. He goes, I've known a lot of guys in our business who were better songwriters than you would ever usually hear. Mm-hmm. Fantastic musicians, great talents. But he said they just weren't ever prepared to play the game.
Right.
And so they just never got over the line. And he wasn't talking about that like they made a mistake. It was almost like he was saying respect to them, in some ways, but in other ways, they never end up with the vehicle to...
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and everyone... And, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I wouldn't have loved to have had a much bigger audience because bigger audience brings more resources, and more resources means more fun.
That's right, yeah.
More possibilities.
And we're also wired that way, aren't we? That we're always looking for the next step up in whatever we're doing. Yeah. Same with playing music. You're always like, how can I improve what I'm doing?
Absolutely. And so in that sense, tell me the man or woman on this planet that feels like they got entirely where they want to be. I don't know. Maybe there are some. They're probably spiritual people, Some guy in India on the road with no shirt on.
Do you think your goals though have changed over the years? Because I said this last time, but I realized at one point recently that a lot of my ambition in my life had been developed when I was 12. I realized
that.
I realized how foolish that was in a way.
That's right. Chasing the fantasy of rock and roll.
Exactly.
Well, that's true. Yeah, they do change. But one surprising, I suppose, turn up is I've kind of come back around to music after all this. I mean, we sort of peaked. My sort of shot at the big time kind of peaked around 2003 and 4, and it was like really. We thought that was why we moved here.
So you moved here to break it in America?
Yeah. I mean, I was ready for a change as well. I was pretty sick of New Zealand, and I was pretty sick of my hometown there and wandering up and down Ponsonby Road and getting drunk, getting bored. So, I was definitely ready to get out of there. Yeah. And so that was great. And, I had a kind of connection to LA in that my dad was a pilot, and he was based out of here a few times for New Zealand over the years.
Right. So you'd been coming out here a lot?
Yeah, I'd come up here a bit before, and before we moved, we'd actually been up here like maybe 5 times or something.
Yeah.
And played shows and fucked around and, hung out as long as possible and
I get
gone to a million meetings and that went nowhere. And finally one did, the last minute. It's actually a really good story. At some point, I'll probably... rewrite it down. But anyway, all of that sort of came to head once that label collapsed, and then we went out on our own and managed to get quite a lot of radio with the song Save Yourself.
Yeah.
We had to pay agents to take it to the radio.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
a lot of money, and
Yeah.
we weren't a record company, so that went pretty quick.
Yeah.
And then, despite that, we did get it up there and had some good moments, you know, especially in Boston, where we sold out the Paradise Lounge a couple of nights, and
Awesome.
we had big show in the Copley Square for one of their the River radio station. There's one of their stations had been a real early proponent of the song and kind of broke it through, and got on that top 40 AC chart and all that stuff. But the reality was it just cost far more than it was worth, which is why the label had finally agreed with their accountants.
Yeah.
You know, like, we either spend $5 million or we cut our losses and run.
Right.
Because that's the reality here.
Yeah.
You know, and we're trying to scoot all over this country that's got 300 million people in it. And meanwhile, the very state that I'm in's got 10 times more people in it than New Zealand.
Yeah.
And that's one state.
Exactly.
So, you know, the scale of it requires, that's why, you know, it's why all these chain corporations work here, because you just keep opening up. That model works, you just keep opening them up. Mm-hmm. But it's not cheap to build 20,000 Burger King stores. You know?
Not at all.
You need capital.
Yeah.
And we didn't have capital. So
And that would have also been right at the time where everyone was panicking in the music
It was
industry.
an absolute free-for-all
Yeah.
and a slide. And all the people in the label that I was an indie label, but it was 20 people, and they were all from major labels.
Yeah.
And I have to hand it to the A&R guy who signed us. He turned out to be a bit of an asshole, but like they all are. But he but he did have an ear for a song, I think, which was nice.
Yeah.
And then essentially after that, you know, we had I made a couple of records. Well, I made my favorite record actually, which is Anyone Can Say Goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
And then that recession hit, and I kind of, I don't even know what happened through about 5 years there, but I know I didn't really. I mean, I was doing shows, I was doing stuff. I don't think it was that great, but you know, I was doing music, but I really wasn't loving music in the same way I used to. I wasn't really listening to much music. Spent a lot of time riding my bike around, you know, smoking weed and riding my bike around, wondering what the fuck was going on.
Right.
It was very hard to survive for that. I know the recession hit New Zealand a bit, but it was like a sledgehammer here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always say the best example was, we had this little apartment on this alley, and the kitchen window looked on the alley, and for about the first few years there's every day you'd see the FedEx truck, the UPS truck, the delivery trucks, all up and down there all the time, and I got to know I would wave at the bloody guy. I know them so well. Then that recession that happened, that the whole share market crash and all that shit.
Yeah.
Basically, the very next day, there was like tumbleweeds down that alley.
Yeah.
Every 2/3 of the shops near around us were empty. It was just, I mean, there was nothing happening.
Yeah. I remember thinking at the time, like, if they just stopped talking about it, we'd be better off, you know, because everyone was freaking out. No one was buying anything. And all the industry just ground to a halt.
Yeah. Well, I think New Zealand was lucky, and it was insulated slightly by our natural resources. You know, our incredible milk and cheese and butter and stuff was still worth a lot of money.
I felt it pretty bad though.
You did?
Yeah, it was a sort of a delayed impact for me.
Right.
I think it kicked in late 2008, and I was feeling it about a year later.
Yeah.
But my business sort of was knocked down by about a half.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
I had
it
to
was
maneuver
bad.
out of it. Yeah.
Because what probably happened, well, we know the first thing that happens is that corporations that were freely spending on this and that and the other,
Yeah.
which is a large part of any working musician's life, I guess, is those kind of gigs, right?
Yeah.
And rich people throwing parties and stuff. And you rely on a bit of that.
Absolutely.
You are going to play for the king sooner or later, if that's what you
We
do.
are jesters.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, historically and traditionally, the lowest of the low. The musicians were not considered they were scum, basically.
Yeah, that's true.
One better than the guy, you know, hoovering the shit out of the fucking stables. But mainly, I think that was a resentment mainly because the musicians quite often were probably like, you know, getting one over the king's harem or whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
While he wasn't looking.
Yeah.
But
So it all came around.
Yeah.
Different way. Yeah.
And they are scum. I mean, there's a degree of truth to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that whole thing just seemed to be a blur. I don't know, you know, where those years went, but
Well, Were you also a little bit burnt out by the
Yeah,
whole process?
it came at the same time as, you know,
Yeah.
now you've got to come to the realization that your dream of worldwide domination is dead in the water and never going to revive.
I mean, I've been through that a little bit, but it's always surprising when you hear someone like yourself who's so established and well known, has a fan base and regularly tours, but you know, it is just the reality, isn't it?
It is, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And what I've realized over the last few years as well, which has been really interesting, is that you've just got, you know, and particularly those of us who were lucky enough in some ways to have major labels back in the day, because despite all the bullshit, and I think we talked about that last time too, that, you know, you're making 15% of wholesale, less deductions, less management, less tax, less everything else. And so, you know, there was really very little chance you were going to make any money on you'd have to sell a hell of a lot of records before you'd see anything other than the advance.
Right.
And the advance, you have to make the record as well.
Yeah.
No, I'd always put a few $1,000s out of that, and I think I bought a girlfriend a $3,000 coat jacket once out of there just to be a dick. You know? She couldn't believe it. But you know, it's not cheap to make a good record either. No. Especially wasn't then. I mean, it is much more now. But you know, it's become a different industry. But I was going to say, those artists that were lucky enough to have the promotional machine at a time when could be a lot more focused, I think, as well.
Yeah.
And you know, can at least say, well, you know, hopefully if you've been smart enough to hold on to your fan base and keep making music or whatever, then you've got something there, and that is an already established market.
Yeah.
It might be shrinking, it might be aging, it might be doing all of those, but it might be expanding as well.
Right.
And you know, I saw a few people in recent times that I'd grown up thinking were gods, like Lloyd Cole and the Commotions, man. I just loved that record.
Yeah.
Rattlesnakes and all that stuff. That, to me, I grew up with that record.
Cool.
As a kid and just thought, you know, this is the coolest of cool English music.
Yeah.
And a couple of years back, my promoter plus one, Kurt Shanks, was, hey, you want to go out on the road with Lloyd Cole? He's solo and you come out solo. And I'm like, fucking A.
Yeah.
How awesome. And then you get to realise that, you know, Lloyd Cole's kind of like, I suppose, an English version of what I kind of did. He was never really huge in England.
Yeah.
He was, you know, he was known, but he wasn't Oasis.
Right.
He wasn't later, obviously earlier than them. But he was a better example. He wasn't, I don't know, think of Duran Duran.
Yeah, yeah.
But nevertheless, he had some hits and some good songs and a loyal audience.
Right.
Now, he basically has had, I suppose, a similar kind of trajectory from that I have, and that his records that broke through got him enough of a fan base. Now he tours everywhere. He was much broader. He was known in a lot more countries, obviously, than I was. He was an international breakthrough rather than local. But he does exactly what I do, but on a slightly, with a bunch more cities, you know. Plays to a few hundred people here and there for a good ticket price because they want to see it. And, you know, it's a really good show. He keeps the price, he keeps the expenses down, travels by himself or with one or two mostly.
Yeah.
And, I mean, to see Lloyd lugging his merch around, you know, his box of CDs and stuff made me think, all right, you know what? I'm doing the right thing.
We're all the same.
We're all the same.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
I mean, there's a lot of attention, a lot of focus on album sales declining, obviously, and streaming and all of that. One of the things that I've thought about a lot more recently, because I kind of entered the music industry just as it went down the toilet, you know. So,
right.
So I didn't experience the days before that.
Right.
And one of the things I've been thinking about recently is actually no one ever made money out of albums, which is you're basically reinforcing.
Yeah.
And potentially the biggest problem now is not where the money's coming from the albums, but how do you connect with an audience?
Yeah.
Because if you go back 20, 30 years, there's only a couple of TV channels.
That's right, yeah.
You know, there's one place that people get, or maybe two places people get the news. It's a lot easier. It was never easy, but it's a lot easier to reach a broader range of people, right?
Yes, I think that is true. I think what you're saying there is actually right, because when you essentially bombard people with something that they don't really have a choice over. Some of them will like it, some of them won't.
Right.
But
Everyone
a lot of people
knows about it, though.
Yeah. A lot of people will hear something that they wouldn't have otherwise heard, and part of the problem now with this kind of the long tail, they call it, right?
Yeah.
Very, very long tail. This tail that gets longer and longer, from the guy who sells one album to his mother, to the guy who sells a few hundred, a few thousand, 10,000, 100. I mean, people used to chuckle and laugh when I told them that we'd only sold, Caviar, Here Comes the Caviar only sold 12,000 copies in New Zealand. And it's like, 12,000 is not much, is it? Now I think, fucking 12,000 is not...
Shitloads.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
And, the record companies, I think we mentioned this too, they would always make you feel like you're a bit of a loser if you didn't sell, because they were always going for the big score. They wanted 100,000 copies, like Robbie Williams. Greg, you've only sold 10,000 or 5,000. We want to sell 30,000 like, someone else. It's like, well, okay, yeah.
I had a small deal back in the day and had that kind of vibe too, and I always thought, well, that's not my problem.
I know.
You're the one selling it.
That's exactly right. Exactly. And if we'd had decent management at the time, we would have said, you know what, fucking do your job. We're done. We've given you a good record.
Yeah.
Shown that it gets on the radio. Now go and sell the fucking records.
I had this moment where I realised the guy I dealt with, I thought, wait, when has he ever actually broken an artist? When has he taken an artist from 0 to 100 himself? And I thought about it. No, I couldn't think of one.
Well, that was a large problem with New Zealand being a bit of an outpost, was that the infrastructure to kind of, I use the word nurture in its least relevant way, nurture young artists through to success. But there have been, I think. Probably Adam Holt deserves some credit for Lord for seeing that early and getting it out to the rest of the world. I'm sure he does. It was just what it was. It was everyone has survived, and you live within the realm that you live within. I mean, you can't change history either. So it comes to the point where, what are you going to do now? And I think you've got to have something that people want. There's no doubt.
Or do you?
Yeah.
What do people want now?
Well, they'll find you. They'll find you if they want it. I'm not saying you have to see what people want and then do it.
Yeah.
It has to be good enough for someone to like it. If no one likes it, you're really not going to get anywhere.
Because I kind of feel like we're all off the hook in a way. We don't need to write the 3-minute 30 hit because
you're entirely right.
We may as well just make art.
Exactly. That's exactly right. There are no rules at all now.
Yeah.
Spotify doesn't care. They don't listen. They just stream it.
Yeah.
So I mean, there was wasn't there that thing where people were putting up tracks of silence and and streaming and getting paid for it? It's like, Jesus, there's an asshole everywhere, around every corner, right? Trying to find a way to make money.
I like that though.
I did too.
It was a stick at the streaming thing.
Yeah,
fuck you guys.
I thought it was really so I thought that was pretty funny too.
Yeah.
All they had to do though was like sing one or two little things in the middle. And they could have called it art and they'd still be doing it. Yeah, so I think you are right. That structure's all gone. Radio was always a bit crap and difficult anyway.
Yeah.
The idea that radio in New Zealand used to be easy is patently not true. And
really?
I was lucky I got shitloads of it, but there were long years prior to that when I didn't get any.
Yeah.
And we tried pretty hard too. So, perseverance.
So how did you sort of break? What was your break? Did you have a moment, or was there a person? Or?
Well, no, I don't think so. I don't think there's really any one break. What felt like the biggest break was back when Isabel was on a little indie label. Trevor Reeky and Cheryl Morris were running it.
Yeah.
And that felt like a break because that went on the radio, and they got that on the radio. No one was getting played on the radio. No New Zealand artists, that's for sure.
High rotation, was it?
Not bad at that point. It definitely, I can't remember the exact kind of figures on that stuff, but it was on the radio.
Yeah.
And the single went in the chart. I think it only got to 4. It never got to number 1.
Right.
But it stayed
4,
there.
that's still great.
Well, it was as an indie, and that's the thing. The only people that were getting anything on the radio were like the Cats Away and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, I know all those people, and they were very smart people, but it's not the kind of music I was particularly into myself.
Yeah.
And the radio itself was very, as always, very driven by what was coming from overseas, And so it was just, it got through. And I think that song got through in the same way, and I wish it was a much bigger way, but it's that song like Gaultier, that song a couple of years ago, with wonderful New Zealand Kimbra, yeah.
She's amazing.
She's incredible. Yeah, I really admire her music, and I think she's got the right attitude for sure.
And she can deliver live too.
I haven't seen her live. I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
But that song came from nowhere. This weird little song, and it was like, why did it get through? It was because it worked. As a song, you just want to hear it again.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a great story.
And it's just unique, isn't it?
Yeah, it's unique. So I was lucky in that sense, and also some credit to the band at the time as well, who really were an eclectic bunch.
Right.
Johnny Fleury and Nigel Russell and Mark Turney. Produced that, and he was talented beyond his years, that boy.
He lives out here now, doesn't he?
He does, yeah, somewhere in, actually, I think rather close to me.
Yeah.
But, it was a combined effort, and I think Pagan being an indie label could probably, you could almost go back to the way they approached stuff then now, because what they did with that song was that we bought wholesale vodka from somewhere cheap, I can't remember. 2 boxes of Stolly, and they would sit in their office, and they put out a thing to all the record stores around Auckland, around the country.
Yeah.
Bottle of Stolly. If we ring up and Greg's album's on, when we ring up, you can hold the phone up and it's playing for that person who answers the phone.
Right. Yeah.
And so they were playing it in the record stores, and you play music in the record stores, people buy that record.
Interesting. Is that right?
It's an old school.
Yeah.
That's old school. So now I don't know quite what the comparison of that is. No one goes to record stores, but that worked. I mean, people, the idea, if you're just sitting in your store and it's like, I'm going to put this on and win myself a bottle of Stolly, that's great.
But the thing there,
creative marketing, I mean, with very small resources.
Yeah.
That's what you got to, I mean, there's probably a digital way to do the equivalent of that now. I don't know, but
that's an entrepreneurial way of approaching it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is that, I mean, I hear about a lot of, you hear some behind-the-scenes stories in the business, don't you? And there's a lot of very well-known artists who actually never really sold any records, but they're all, branded like they did.
Absolutely.
And it's quite shocking when you learn some of that stuff. But you clearly have an engaged audience.
Well, yeah,
and that started right at the start, didn't it?
Well, it did, but we built that up with, that wasn't done through radio or anything else. I think that was done by the old-fashioned way, like just start touring.
Shaking hands.
Yeah, sort of and just getting out again and again and again on the road. I mean, the Greg Johnson set, we went all over this country. Not this country, all over that country.
Yeah.
All over New Zealand. And, we played again and again. We didn't just go once, we'd go back, go back. We had a little run we'd do Bodega in Wellington, we'd drive down to Wellington and sometimes do something on the way, but usually not. 2 nights at Bodega, Friday, Saturday.
Drive down and play the same night?
Oh, yeah, of course. Wow. Yeah, drive down that morning. And then play. And then
they must have kicked your ass.
Stayed at Trekkers. The roads weren't quite as busy and the cars seemed bigger and faster somehow. I don't know, maybe they weren't. I know we used to drive like bat out of hell down there. And probably there was a lot less traffic and certainly less cops.
Yeah.
New Zealand's like a police state these days.
That's right.
But we'd get down there, we'd do 2 nights, stay at Trekkers. Oh my God, that place. When it really was a backpackers, it was, it was such a shithole. But we'd all stay in one room, that's fine. And then the second night, and then on the Sunday morning we'd drive and we'd play New Plymouth. There was a surfy bar there called, I cannot remember the name of it, but we'd do about 100 people there on a Sunday night. And the guy who ran it was this hilarious guy, surfer. He was a classic. Yeah. What was that called? It'll come back to me. Probably Lasers with a Z or something. But no, that was a club in New Plymouth. That's right, a real good one. Yeah. That was great. And, so we'd find these pockets of places we'd go and play, and we'd do that. We'd probably do that 3 times a year at least.
Yeah.
And then all the other places in between, everything else we could do all around Auckland as often as possible, parties, festivals, all that shit. And then just keep doing it, keep making records and keep playing.
How did you re-engage with the fans? Because obviously you wouldn't have had social media and that sort of thing. So people come to the show and they love it. How do you try and get them back to the show?
You know, I don't have any recollection of trying to get people to shows. They just seemed to come to shows back then. It seemed a lot easier. You put up a poster and they showed up.
Do you think it was more of a culture thing? People just went out?
It could have been. And also, you know, I think I mentioned this the other day, was my audience was young as well.
Yeah.
When you're young, you go out. And when you're young, you're following a band, you go and follow them.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you and your mates are going to go see that band.
Right.
Because all your other mates will be there. It's a social thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And that changes a bit as you get, you know, when you get older into the kind of family sort of starting crowd, and then it's all a bit more difficult. But then the kids grow up and go away, and then they come out again.
Yeah.
And I see all this.
Were you organising these tours yourself, or did you have management at that point?
I had management, but my management was like my mate who worked at Hort Research had an office up there, and
right.
we'd go in there, and Davin Voot was his name, and an extraordinarily wonderful man. But he'd have some sort of plant DNA thing going, and he'd, hang on, I've just got to go and I'd go upstairs. Hang on, I've just got to go and incubate this plant virus for him, and I'll be back. Come back, and then he'd be on the phone. He had posters around, like it's the other scientists were looking at him, like what the fuck's going on here? And he had organised these shows for us and do all the phoning and everything else. And he was very efficient in a scientific way that worked for him, and also a very. And this is another good one, actually, if you are travelling a lot and young and a bit stupid and inclined to be getting involved with punters' girlfriends and drinking too much and all that stuff. I think it's really good to have a management or a / bodyguard. Right? And Davin was...
I was wondering what you were going to say next just then. I was like, where is this going?
Yeah, no, Davin was the kind of guy he did... one of those martial arts very well. He had a black belt in one of them, and he was quite strong and he had a very calm, extraordinarily calm demeanour. Yeah, but also a good sense of humour and a voracious appetite for alcohol and drugs, which seemed to have no effect on him at all, no matter how much. So he was always very good. There was one time in I think it was Rotorua, me and Trevor and Davin came back from this gig. We'd been out drinking afterwards. Into this bar at the Motor Inn, and it was like some kind of motocross thing or something. Yeah. If it happened now, I would have said, hey, my cousin's one of the champions. But anyway, we walked in, and it was one of those scenes where the whole place, it was, you know, late. Everyone's been drinking a lot Friday. The whole place sort of fell silent. We walked in, because Trevor had long hair, and Davin looked at her eyes. It looked like a pretty scruffy little thing. And we're all standing there, it's all a bit quiet, and Davin looks over, without saying anything, drops and does the full splits to the ground and back up again, like, and back up, without saying anything. And Trevor and I just kind of like, what the fuck? The whole place kind of like, oh, hey. Yeah. That's when I got back to it. It was really fun. It was a brilliant icebreaker.
Did you ever have much grief on the road from, you know, people getting a bit drunk or violent or anything like that?
Nothing too much. Most of the fighting and stuff I saw was playing clubs in Auckland, honestly. Yeah. I got in a few, you know, stupid late night fisticuffs with people, always over girlfriends. Right, yeah. Never anything else.
Really?
Always. Always.
The ones that I've witnessed or been involved with have usually been someone demanding to play your guitar or that you play the song they want to hear.
No one would ever do that, because I would just go, oh, fuck off. Yeah. I was never friendly to those people, and it's usually when you start getting friendly to those people that you run into trouble.
It's when you give them a minute, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
You engage.
But no, it was always domestic orientated. But you do get to see a lot of the worst of humanity.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And the best.
All shades, all types, all levels of wealth, all cultures.
Oh yeah.
It's quite a revealing job in a way, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. You know, you can pretty much pick them out.
I wonder if that's why musicians and creative people in general are usually quite liberal and progressive and more empathetic.
I don't know. You could be right.
Well, some of them are more empathetic.
Hughes is not.
Some of them are more pathetic.
Mark Hughes not. He's very much, you know, look after yourself. He's a libertarian, extreme libertarianism that he espouses. But you're right, though. I mean, you do have to know people, because I mean, and that's why, you know, I'm a nightclub singer. We mentioned that. I'm a club singer. Yeah. I've never played giant rooms. Right. The biggest rooms I've ever played would be the sort of 1,000-seat, 1,200. That'd be the biggest ever. And that's mostly behind, I think, too. These days it's, 200-300 seaters, sometimes 100, sometimes 400, but a crowd you can see right in front of you.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like to have them there. I don't sing till I can see the whites of their eyes. And that means you've got to, you have responsibility to the other members of the crowd to take care of any issues with idiots.
Yeah.
And usually it's the best thing you can do is actually allow crowd self-controlling, really.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And suggest, gee, that guy, I don't know, what are we going to do about him? And there's usually some hero will come and like grab him by the neck or something.
You were saying last time how the big shows where there's the separation between the stage and the audience, the barrier and so on, how disconcerting that is.
It's not. I mean, my music's not that kind of music really. Anyway, It's not bombastic or grandiose. Hopefully,
I don't know what kind of music suits that. But
Van Halen?
massive rock bands, eh?
Yeah.
I found it always really weird. Like, I don't know. I kind of feed off the audience's reaction, and you just don't get it like that.
Big shows, I guess, where you've got the lights come up and 10, 20 dancers leap out and 400 floating pigs come out, that kind of thing. But as far as it goes for the kind of music that I've always done, it's sort of intimate. It's listening music really. So the most fun really are the small gigs where they've paid a large ticket price.
Theatres would be.
Theatres are good, but theatres also can be a bit. I like theatres, small theatres I like, but big theatres are also a little bit kind of, they're sort of spreading up and away from you and you can't move around. And
right.
I don't know, to me there's still nothing like a small seated venue, I don't know, part seating maybe, or, I don't know, but.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's good to have a real experience with the people, and that requires, for my act anyway, it's partly, the songs are kind of quite personal in some ways, and so that's how it works out, and these days a large part of my show is after the show I'll go out and sign CDs, and people always say, oh, you still do CDs? Why do you do that? I said, well, because you can't sign a freaking download, can you? Yeah, so and it's good, and people love that. And honestly, I'm sure people come out and buy CDs who don't even have a bloody CD player. They want a memento.
Yeah, that's right.
And they get to say hello. We have a chat, whatever. And a lot of people are old friends or fans that I haven't seen for a while, or they may not have come to a show for a number of years, whatever. And then people bring old stuff too to sign. It's kind of fun, but it's just a good way to have a drink after the show, meet some people, and make some more money.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to jump back to when you're saying you got into this kind of dark place with maybe life in general, but at least with music.
Yes.
When did that turn around, and what turned it around?
Good question. I'm not sure, to be quite honest. I think 50. I turned 50, and it's like, holy shit. I've been thinking maybe I should get another job. I'm really struggling to, pay all my bills. I got a kid now, and she's just got massive medical bills for this thing she had, and it was like, it's, you're thinking, crikey, how am I going to do this? So I was asking around, thinking about other things I could do, and one of my cousin's husband was quite good because he owns this company. I said, do you think I could be a sales rep for you or something? He's here in the US, and he came back and said, I think you're probably better to try and find ways to do what you do and stay within what you know.
Yeah.
And he was entirely right. I'd be the worst salesman. I couldn't do it. You can't go to a straight job after 50 years of not having one.
Of being free.
No, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So it made me think a bit more, and at that stage it was like, really, at that point I realised how lucky I was and had always been in some ways, and it just that, you have to get over your own, as you said, your own 12-year-old ambition has to become a slightly more mature one.
Right, yeah.
And
to renegotiate.
Yeah, exactly. And what I realised at that point was the one factor here that was there, whether there was money or not money, was always the music, And I just started rediscovering and re-loving music in a way. It had become a bit of a job,
Yeah.
And it's a great feeling when you realise that you've got it. And once you're 50, holy shit, you're on the short run down now. There's, if you're lucky, you got 25, 20 years or something.
Yeah.
And so make a few more records.
Yeah.
Hang out.
Yeah.
Drink some nice wine.
I mean, I relate to that.
Hang with your family.
That journey, though, because, I sort of went into a similar headspace. And for me, it coincided with the streaming thing because I really saw how bad that was.
Right.
Like, there was a moment where I just thought, what's the point?
Yeah.
And a few other things contributed, and I was sort of in that funk for a while, and I considered leaving the music industry too. I actually sort of considered that every other week, I think.
Right, yeah.
But I went through a couple of months of really thinking I'd step out.
Yeah.
And then I realised I could actually ultimately redesign my headspace.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're doing.
But redesign my career as well, so that I didn't have all of my sense of value and sense of worth hitched on this one type of success.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I allowed myself, I can be a session musician, I can do this sort of project work as it comes up, I can sort of do a bunch of stuff, and I started to think more about lifestyle.
That's right. Lifestyle is very important, and that's why I've realised that I have been extremely lucky. And,
Yeah.
I've never had to do a job that I didn't want to do, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you do some musical jobs you don't want to do, but everyone has to do that.
Right.
But it's definitely worthwhile taking into account that, I think, because I know, a ton of people with a whole lot more money than me. In fact, that's pretty much everyone. Really. Seriously. But they don't have this big catalogue of work that they're very proud of.
Yeah.
And I know that after me, I won't leave my daughter any cash, but I'll leave her a catalogue that earns a bit of money, and who knows what the future could do with it. It's like, it's something real.
I think you'll leave her a bigger gift than that. I think she'll see her father a man who pursued a real life.
I hope so,
to try to make the most of his life rather than being afraid. Right.
Well, thank you, brother. That's very kind of you to say that. But, I think these things become far more relevant as you get a bit older. And
Sure.
I know you're quite a lot younger than I am, obviously. But I think that if you can figure that shit out by your early 30s, you're in a good place.
Yeah.
No one expects anything too dramatic in your 20s other than, you should have a good time in your 20s because that's when you've got the energy for it.
Yeah. But it's usually your 30s, right? Because in your 20s you're kind of fucked up.
Yeah, well, that is true as well, yeah. So that was my early teen. No, the thing is, you've got to enjoy the art, and a lot of times people have sort of, talked about this and that and the other, and these incredible ideas they have for the industry. And I'd always just say, just remember that the music is its own reward.
Yeah.
Music is its own reward, and we're lucky in that sense because if you're building concrete blocks, trying to sell them, well,
Exactly.
what use are they really? But at least with music, no matter what happens to it, you've got a song, you've got an instant relief from the trials and tribulations of the world.
Right. I mean, that's how I got out of my funk is when I started playing, I was just that 12-year-old with this relationship that was about this distance between me and the neck,
Exactly.
And just being able to play those strings and hear myself make that sound. Mm-hmm. It was like, what the fuck? I can do this, And
that's right.
That's where I got back to. And that's where I reset myself,
That's it.
It sounds like a similar thing.
It does,
for you.
man.
Yeah.
It does. We're reborn.
Yeah.
Reborn musicians and evangelical musicians.
Pentecostal.
That's right.
Has it changed your version or your perception of what success means for you?
Yes, it has.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, that was quite specific before, and that was some sort of really quite abstract idea of a lot of money. Money was, I think, obviously, like a lot of us, we dream of being rich.
Yeah.
Having this big house and, all the rest of it. But then again, I remember Neil Finn had his big house. We had the $1 million check and the check made out to the burglar and stuff, and that was wonderful. I'm sure he lived and loved it.
Yeah.
And Carry and all that. But he didn't seem that much more happy than anyone else,
Right.
A little bit more miserable sometimes. Yeah. But, that's the thing. I've known plenty of people who've got lots of money and really kind of hate themselves or hate their job, or they just never have time to spend on all their money. The neighbourhood I'm in, we live in a tiny shoebox, but up the road only a mile, there's these huge mansions. Mm. I'd ride my bike around up there or whatever, and the only people I'd ever see enjoying those beautiful gardens were the Mexican gardeners.
Wow.
because they're the ones that did the work. They'll be sitting out there and having their lunch and laughing. I think, good on you guys. You did the work.
Yeah.
You enjoy this garden. You'd never see the owners. You'd see basketball hoops, but never any kid throwing a thing. The kid's off they're trying to teach the kid how he can make enough money to get this too. But, you know, they're never there.
Yeah.
Ever.
Speaking of Mexicans, have you heard the story about the Mexican fisherman?
No.
It's like an old proverb or something.
Right.
And it's about that lifestyle lesson. I'll break it right down to be super short. But the idea is that there's this fisherman who goes and fishes and comes back and has a siesta. He might go out again, and in the evenings he hangs out with his friends and family. He has this great life.
Right.
And he meets this American businessman who says, if you do this and do that, you can buy another boat and you expand your crew and da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And he keeps saying, why would I do that? Well, then you can buy another boat and you can da-da-da-da. Why would I do that? Well, then you blah, blah, blah. And he builds the whole thing up. And he goes, why would I do that? Well, then you can sell it all and you can retire. And he goes, well, then what would I do? And he goes, well, I don't know, get up in the morning and go for a fish and, I don't know, have a siesta, you know, come back, hang out with the family or something, I don't know. Yeah.
That's really good.
I love that.
I do too. I like that.
Yeah, because it makes you think like, well, what am I doing this for?
Yeah, that's right.
You know, what's the end game?
That's right. And we did talk, I think, in our last unrecorded, the unrecorded sessions. About, you know, the fact that the music and the creative world in particular, it opens a lot of doors that would often be shut. So, you know, whilst I might be the poorest bastard in the world, I am the guy who's in this massive suite with Welcome to the Hotel, Mr. Johnson's, and, you know, occasionally that happens. I wish it happened every time, but, you know, one or two festivals. These sort of things happen, and oftentimes you'll be on beautiful yachts or in some exotic location that someone else has paid for.
Yeah.
And that's always good.
And let's not forget that when you're not on the yacht, you live in Santa Monica and work in your own studio and you have a wife and a kid.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
What else do you need?
Well, this is right. Yeah, the family side of it is, I'm very lucky in that sense, I know. And you know, it's, to me, it's a shame that that New Zealand has become so expensive as well, because it's
crazy.
It's making it very difficult for artists. And what I hope will happen is the real estate collapse that's imminent there. I wish that would hurry up and happen, because then they're going to figure out that the whole world's about to go online. Like, I don't even go down to the drugstore for mouthwash. I Amazon it. They deliver it.
Right.
I know that's lazy.
Yeah.
Right? But
it's the way it's going, though. That's
if I want something, I know I can get the exact thing I want on Amazon, and it'll be there tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Outside my apartment.
Absolutely.
So that's coming. I know it's already pretty well established in most parts of New Zealand, but it's coming to a much greater degree everywhere.
Yeah.
My hope is that leaves a ton of retail space empty. And I think it'll be less likely in New Zealand than here, actually, because they had apparently the most over-retail spaced country in the world was the USA.
Right.
But the result of that will ultimately, I'm hoping, mean that there's going to be an awful lot of cheap, crappy office space available.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's starting.
Shitty buildings that no one else wants for their proper business.
Yeah.
But musicians will go, yep, let's board up the front door and we'll put a studio on the back.
Yeah, I think it's starting. There are more empty lots appearing along Dominion Road and those sorts of places. And you are hearing, I don't know how true it is, but, you know, the whole real estate thing, you're hearing more and more about houses that are just not getting rented out or not getting sold.
Right.
They just sit there.
Yeah, and of course the problem being with the house prices as stupid as they are is that the rental's has gone up through the roof. And,
it's crazy.
And this is the thing, you know, excuse me, we need cheap rent.
Yeah.
It's essential.
And we need more fair terms for tenants.
Yes.
Yeah, we need more protection for them.
I've probably got 10 minutes, brother, I think, before I have to bust.
I think we're pretty good, but yeah.
In some ways, it's slightly more focused talk than the other day for a show, to be honest.
I think the universe actually did us a favour.
It may have. Well, it was a pleasure to come and hang out with you again, brother, and to see this nice little room.
It's cool, eh?
Yeah, I love it.